Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. I'd like to welcome in Jeff Fendrick to the It's Been How Long podcast studio. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Kara. How are you? We were just catching up. I think we were talking about the old days. We met probably, I don't remember when you started at Woodcrest, fourth grade. So
Fourth
we've
grade.
probably been friends for 50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
That
uh, and it's great talking to you again and catching up. And I was telling you before we started this that it's been so great listening to these podcasts, to hearing the stories and seeing the familiar faces. And uh, it was a great time. And I have just found myself in these last few weeks reminiscing so much more about our Cherry Hill days. Cause as we get older, it just seems like things are tougher, and these were just so idyllic times. And it was just so much fun and a great place to grow up, which I think it's amazing how everyone has said that. Cause I think you've commented before that people talk about high school as being tough years. And it just seems like, as I remember it, they were great years.
yeah, yeah.
I really have enjoyed these, and especially, your interview with Robin was unbelievable. Her fight
Thank you. Yeah.
against her, and her faith and her courage, and she is an inspiration. I've read her care page before I saw her interview, and I was amazed about how strong she is. But just hearing her put in the things into words, I mean, I know I speak for everybody when I say we're all praying for her and thinking about her, and
For
so
sure.
so thanks for doing this and for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So what are you up to these days? Here we are, 40 years plus. What are you up to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a husband. I have a great wife, Stephanie, who actually is a Cherry Hill East graduate as well. I can tell you how I met her because that's a good story at some point. But I'm been married for 30 years, and it's been the best decision I ever made. And I'm a father. We have three great kids. I was also telling you I have a daughter who's 27, who's an OBGYN resident, and then a 25-year-old who got her master's in nutrition and is a dietitian at Children's Hospital. And then I have a son who's in business. He was the only smart one who went into business, and he work. And then I guess I'm a brother. I still have my two brothers, and my two sisters both live within a mile of where I live. And we were always really close to my best friends. We do a lot together. So I love being part of a big family still. And I was also telling you, my dad is still alive at 91 and really strong. So I love being a son. And then what I guess I really do most of the time is I'm a general pediatrician for the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I work at one of their satellite offices. So I see kids from birth to 21. And one of the best parts about it is I haven't really gone that far. I live around a mile from where I grew up, where we grew up in Woodcrest. So my office is like a mile from Woodcrest, a mile from Cherry Hill East. And some of the funnest parts of my day are when I see high school students and they're at Cherry Hill East. They don't have any of the same teachers we have, but I get to hear about their classes, about their activities. And it's fun. It keeps me young to hear about them. And and I've even been fortunate in the last few years to have some of our classmates who have brought their kids to us in my office, and that's been really great. And then I have now some of our classmates are grandparents, so I've seen some grandkids, which is even more special. So I chose a career I really love. It's been a great, I guess, 30 years I've probably been doing it, and with kids, every day is a different day, and every person has a different story. And the ages, from again birth to 21, it's just totally been a fantastic career. So I'm very, very happy, very lucky, and I've had a great time since high school.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, how do you enjoy spending your time when you're not at work?
So I guess for years I was coaching my kids. They played soccer and basketball and baseball, and that was always fun because I got to be with them, be with their friends, get to see them all together, and hear a lot of gossip as I was on the fields with them about their lives, which was important. And then I also like to exercise. I was a runner, but I've had some back problems, so I walk, I do the Peloton, I do some yoga. I guess lately we've started traveling. I had never left the country. Growing up, one of five kids, we just never could travel anywhere big because it was just difficult. to get everyone together and to afford it. And so in 2016, we took our first trip. We have good friends who had brought 16 people, 8 couples together to travel to Israel.
Oh,
And I had never left the country. And the group that went, none of the people who went had ever been to Israel. And the people who organized it, they had been there many times. So we went to Israel and we just had an amazing time. The 16 of us, it was a fantastic country that, it's the size of New Jersey, and the people are so proud of their land. There's so much there, religion and food and beaches and cities and history. It was great. And we did that trip. And then I think I, got the travel bug. We went with the same group a few years later to Greece. And it was a
nice.
different trip, more beaches and boats, but we still had a great time, the same 16 of us. And then finally they planned their latest trip to Italy. It was interrupted by COVID, but then we finally went last year at this time, and that was really fantastic too. We went to Lake Como and Milan and Florence, the Italian Riviera and Rome. So I really enjoyed traveling. I went to Spain also last year because my son was there for a semester. So I guess traveling, exercising. We have a house now in Margate, so that's, I guess, our favorite place to go on a regular basis. We leave our jobs and we drive down to Margate, which is only an hour from where we grew up in Cherry Hill. And it's kind of like we get down here, we cross the bridge, and you kind of feel like your worries are behind you. So it's been great to do that.
Oh, that's nice. So clearly you were running back in high school because you played a number of sports. You want to refresh us what you did back then, activity wise?
Yeah, so I guess my activities in high school was I played baseball. That was my first passion, my first love. And then I also played football in high school. And I think those were the big activities. Uh, I don't remember getting involved in too much else. But I enjoyed the sports, and I enjoyed playing at Cherry Hill, and it was a great environment in those days to to play sports.
Did you have a job back in high school?
I had a job. I try to get the years together, but I think when I was in high school, I was working at the old Woodcrest movie theater,
Oh,
which
okay.
opened up at the Woodcrest Shopping
Yeah.
Center. I was an usher there, and I think that was towards our junior or senior year. And it was funny because it had been an X-rated movie theater before they changed it over to a regular movie theater. That was one of the fun parts of the job. We would sometimes be showing, I don't know, Grease, and we would have some guy in a truck who would park in the parking lot and go to the ticket booth to try to get tickets, thinking it was still an X-rated movie because he hadn't been in town in a while. So we would have to tell him, now this is Grease. This is not something triple X. But so I worked there, and it was a great place to work. We watched the movies. There were always people coming in from our class to see movies, and so it didn't last very long. It was a small theater. I remember by the end, I started as an usher, but by the end they were so cash strapped that I would sell the ticket, then I would walk to the candy area and give someone popcorn, and then go back in the movie theater and be the usher. I was doing everything, but it was a nice job. I think I also did some landscaping. I remember being a landscaper and how hard it was waking up every morning and cutting lawns. And it taught me that, when you pick your career, it better be something that you look forward to doing every morning, because I didn't enjoy that.
No.
But those were my main jobs through high school.
Cool. So what did you do after graduation?
Yeah, I guess it's a good story. I remember when we were seniors in high school, and back then I don't think it was the same way as it was now. I mean, I know with my kids, when they were planning for what they were going to do after high school, they carefully researched colleges. They had advisors who helped them. They, seemed to have a plan, and they would, apply to lots of different schools. When we were in high school, I don't remember doing that. I mean, I had, I guess, parents who weren't, they were a little clueless on this, and I didn't know much. And I applied to 5 colleges out of East. I remember I applied to Amherst College where my dad had gone, and it was a small liberal arts college. My dad had gone there, so I thought that would help me. And I was going to try to play football and baseball there because it was small. And then I also applied to 3 bigger schools where you went, to Virginia, and I applied to Chapel Hill, I guess where you are
Yeah.
now. And then my first choice was Duke, so I applied to those 3. And then finally I applied to Penn. And at that time, it sounds strange to hear now, but it was like my safety school, because a lot of people from Cherry Hill East were getting into Penn. And at the same time, the baseball coach at Penn, his daughter was a manager for us at East in baseball. So I knew him and I thought that would help. But I still remember, we back then didn't get emails. We would get those letters, and I got my first thin letter, which meant you weren't going to get in. I got it from Amherst, and I was a little disappointed because I thought my dad might be able to pull some strings, but I got rejected there. And then I heard pretty soon after from Duke and from Virginia, North Carolina, and the same thing, the thin envelopes. I wasn't accepted. And then finally, it was probably late March, early April, and I heard from Penn, and the same thing, the thin envelope, no rejection, the rejection, no colleges left. And so I started to get a little nervous. I mean, everybody was having fun senior year, and I was having a great time, but I didn't have a college to go to, and it was past the time where you could put applications in. And I was lucky. My dad was a teacher at Jefferson, and one of his students was from Easton, Pennsylvania, where Lafayette College is. And his dad was a professor there. And he said, maybe I can get my dad to talk to the baseball coach there and see if he can pull any strings. And he came out to watch me. Ironically, it was at Eastern High School where my kids all went. So he came out to watch me there. And I did pretty good. And he called me after the game and said, listen, I want you to come here. I want you to play here. I can't really help you in any way financially, but I can get you into the school. And I don't know if he knew the whole story. And as soon as he said he could get me into the school, I said, well, that's good enough because I don't have anywhere else to go. So I went right. So the answer to the question, after graduation, I went to Lafayette College, which was small. It was 2,000 students. And I
Oh,
guess
wow.
back we had almost 1,000 in our class. So it was a
Yeah.
big adjustment going there. But I felt ready. Cherry Hill East, I thought, really prepared us for college. So I got there, and I guess probably one of my biggest regrets is when I got there, I knew I was pre-med. I knew I was going to play baseball. And it was a Division I baseball. So it was a lot of time, but I had a lot of fun. I thought when I was at Cherry Hill East, I had good friends. We did a lot of fun things, and I got to college, and for 4 years, I think I just worked. And I think that's a big regret. I wish I had enjoyed the college years more. You hear everyone say how college are the best years of your life. And I was in a fraternity by senior year. The people in the fraternity, when I would show up, they didn't even know who I was most of the time because I had just been in the library or on the baseball field. So I went to Lafayette College for 4 years, and it was a great experience. But like I said, I didn't have as much fun as I should have. And then I ended up going to Jefferson for medical school, Jefferson Medical College. And then I stayed in Philadelphia at St. Christopher's Hospital for Children and did my pediatric training. So that's, I guess, what I did after graduation and started working.
Wow. And so where are you living now?
So I live now in Voorhees, which
Okay.
is not far from Trail. I never
Yeah.
knew, as I look back to our days, I mean, when you drove down Crescent Road and you got to East, I didn't realize Crescent Road continued, and Voorhees, next town over down Crescent Road, and it was there, I guess, back then, but I didn't remember it. And so I live literally right past East on Crescent Road, probably 2 miles down. And my kids have all gone to the Eastern High School, which is the Voorhees Regional School, and we've been probably living there for, I guess, like 25 years now.
Mm.
My wife and I moved to Chester County for probably 5 years. It was a big effort. I said my wife was from Cherry Hill, and it was our big effort to try to get away from Cherry Hill. We didn't, go to Europe or Hawaii or California. We went to Chester County, and we did it for 5 years, and we realized that maybe Cherry Hill wasn't too bad, and we were having our third child, and we decided to go back to where we were comfortable. And we've been, I guess, besides those 5 years, in either Cherry Hill or Voorhees our whole lives.
So was there a class or a teacher at East that influenced you beyond your high school days?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I told you I thought I was really prepared by East for college, but at the same time, I don't remember one teacher or one class. I guess I've heard it from other people on the podcast. I think I learned more through sports. I mean, baseball was my first love, but football especially. I mean, I think when I think of football at East, I always think of it this time of year because in August they used to have a football camp, and I remember we would get there in the morning and we would go out in the fields, and it was hot and there was dew on the ground, and we would have pads on, and the coaches would yell at us and scream at us, and we would work really hard, and it was difficult. We would do lunch in the cafeteria after the morning practice. And then I remember we all would take a nap on mats in the old auxiliary gym, which was on the basement of East. And it was, you know, it was horrible. We would then go practice in the afternoon again in the heat, and same yelling, screaming. And then we would get a little dinner in the cafeteria, and that was pretty horrible too. And then we would have to practice a third time. And we did that day after day. And then the
Ooh.
season started, and it was just as hard. But I mean, I think learning through that experience, I mean, you know, we learned how to overcome adversity and sacrificing for a greater good. I mean, respect for your coaches, resilience, teamwork. I mean, all those things that football taught me, I think, you know, were so instrumental in helping me in my academics, in my career. And then especially as a father, they were helpful in, you know, giving me things to talk to my kids and teach them. And it's funny now because I mean, I talk about how important football was, but I'm a pediatrician and I get asked all the time, you know, should my kid play football? Isn't it dangerous? Concussions and head injuries and all the repetitive trauma and the future sequelae down the, you know, years to come. And I'm conflicted because I did feel like it had a lot of value. And I do see a lot of the kids I take care of. I mean, they need structure. They need someone to give them some boundaries, and they need to learn respect. And so it was a great experience for me. And I guess now it doesn't, you know, it doesn't work as well as it did back then because of what we learned. But that was probably where I learned the most, being on the football field. And even though I never played after high school, it was a great experience.
Do you think teams can get away with 3 days this time anymore?
I don't think they can. I don't think, I
Yeah.
mean, it was even funny. The part I remember the most is even when we would go to get a drink. I mean, there would be a line at just, they have one jug of Gatorade and you would
Yeah.
line and they'd give you one squirt and then the next person would come. And now you think of all the rules and of course good rules, because people have, you know, especially in the heat, died out
Yeah.
of feel
Yeah.
dehydration. But no, I don't think they could do it. I think everything, a lot of the things we did, you know, now we're really sounding old, but a lot of the things we did, you can no longer get away with. And I think
Right.
in many ways, they helped to shape the people we are. And it was important stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of like those stories in residency. It's like we were on call every other day and you missed half the great cases. And you're like, yeah, but not a great practice.
No, it's so true. And I told you, I think my daughter is a resident now, and they work very hard, and it's crazy. But you know, I sometimes have to bite my lip and say, well, you're working hard, but we used to do this and stay up
Yeah.
this long and work this many days. So, but it's good that things are changing, I guess. You know, people are
I think
learning.
they're, yeah, changes for the better.
Yes.
Um, they also never had to go to a library. Um,
That's right. Right.
so did you have a high school sweetheart?
I had a high school sweetheart late in high school. I guess it was probably February, March of our senior year. I met someone, Marianne Negrelli, who was a year younger than us. And so we were together through the end of high school and then through our first year of college. And she was a great girl. It was a great time. We, you know, it was really made senior year. And then, you know, it made my first year of college more difficult because she was home. She was a year younger, but it was a great experience and it was a great time. And then I can't mention my high school sweetheart without talking about my real sweetheart, who's
That's right.
my
That's
wife
the
now.
next question. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's 7 years younger than us, but as it coincidence goes, she's from Cherry Hill East as well. And it's funny that my little sister Allison was 7 years
Yeah,
younger.
that's right.
And when we were growing up, when I was 17, we had 5 kids. So I used to drive a lot of my sisters around to help my mom, you know, drive them to Jazz Unlimited and the Cowtail Barn, all the places that we had in Woodcrest and Cherry Hill. And I was the driver. And they were all so young when I was in the car driving them. I was 17, they were 10. And then as we got older, my sister had friends who started to get older. And she always said when, you know, I was having trouble meeting girls that she would fix me up with her friends. And I just couldn't do it. I always thought of them being 10 and driving in the back seat. But finally, I guess I was finishing my last year of residency. And you know how it is when you're going from college to medical school to residency, you're still like you're in school and you really haven't started your first job. So I was finishing my last year of residency and my sister said, you know, I do have a friend who's 7 years younger, but she's not someone you drove to Jazz Unlimited or the Cowtail Barn. You didn't really know her, but I really think you guys would get along well. And my friend at the time, my wife, she was also someone who went right through. She went from college to get her MBA, and she was at Duke, which is where I always wanted to go. Duke is where I applied for college and didn't get in. We love Philadelphia sports, but Duke basketball is our second favorite kind of pastime as a family. In fact, my mom and dad I know you're from North Carolina. My mom and dad got engaged at a Duke basketball game, and
Oh, really?
game, yeah, so closely. My dad put the ring on my mom's wrong finger, but they were both so into the game that they didn't seem to mind. They didn't care. So we've always loved Duke. And that was what my sister told me. She's not only someone I think you'd get along with, but she's a Duke, and she was in her last year. So I started to think, if we get along, I'll be able to, go visit her at Duke, and I'll maybe get to go to a Duke basketball game. So I fell in love with her for all the wrong reasons, but it worked out great. And we met in, I guess, May, and by the time she went back to her final year in August, we knew we were getting married. And so we've been married for 30 years, and it's fun because she's from Cherry Hill, and we see people sometimes, who had older siblings or younger siblings, and we know a lot of the same people. And so it's just, I thank my sister every day because it was the best move I ever made. And it's been great. We've been married for 30 great years. So that's my real, not high school sweetheart, my sweetheart from high school.
That's very cool. That's a great story. So do you have friends from East you're still in touch with?
Yeah, I wish I was in touch with more. I guess when I grew up, or in high school, I had, I think, two groups of friends. I mean, I had my local friends from Woodcrest and the neighbors near Woodcrest. I mean, David Hershkowitz, Mark Green, Stephen Jaffe, Todd Bassman, who was actually getting married for the first time in October of this year. So I will be at his wedding, and Joey Camerling. So those were my friends from the neighborhood, and I still do see them around. And then I had my friends that were more from sports that I don't get to see as much: Gary Lagori, Steve Stewart, Jeff Woolley, Bernie Donaldson, George Lee. I mean, I'm trying to think of others. And then ones I do get to see still that have been more a part of my life lately is Eric Ruppel. I have lived with him a few times. I've been in a couple of his weddings. I don't want to, it's not good when you say plural, but Rupp's a great guy, and we've had great times together. And so I still keep in touch with him. And then finally, Bill Kaiser and we meet together like once a month and have lunch. And Bill's exactly the same. I don't know if you remember from high school, but he looks the same. He hasn't aged. He's funny. He's a great dad, a great husband. He's just very successful in his career. So those are the two that I see the most now. And I did catch up. I went to the last reunion, which was not a big reunion, but I did get to see a lot of the other people I mentioned, and it was really Bernie Donaldson. I don't know if I mentioned him. It was great seeing all those people, and they were great friends then, and you grow apart, but they just still have a special place in your heart. All those people from high school.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was a great school. We had so many different groups, between sports and the classes we were in, and just it was just again, I just reminisce so much about what a great time it was, and all the people. I mean, I just felt like we just were very lucky. 800 people, and I don't. I mean, maybe your memory gets jaded, but I don't remember a bad person or a bad experience during most of the time there.
Yeah. Anybody you were tight with, you lost touch with, or maybe reconnected with through Facebook or something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can answer this in a different way. I mean, one person that I really miss a lot, and it's because he passed away, is Scott Portner. Scott was a great friend of mine. He played a lot of sports with him, and we kept in touch after high school a lot. And he unfortunately battled with cancer for a long time, and died a few years ago. And so I guess that's the biggest loss. I miss talking to him. I know I don't mean to bring up a bad subject, but I know we've lost too many people from our class. Sharon Ramasher was another one who I know died. Jack Byrne, who I was at his funeral, a great friend of mine from baseball. And I mean, I know there's so many others. John Newcomb, I've heard people reference here. I know Lisa Tandorjian. I mean, we just, unfortunately, that those are the people I wish I could still be in touch with, because it's just so scary how people we're losing people at our age already. And so
Yeah.
that's, I guess Scott is the one I miss the most.
Okay. Do you have a standout memory from high school? Just like, one thing, be it a classroom event or a sports event or a friend event?
I guess I don't. I mean, I just have so many great memories. I mean, I can't remember one specific thing. Maybe it was playing football, like I was telling you, all those head injuries. I don't have memories anymore, but I do just remember when I think of us growing up and us in high school, I just loved it. I loved everything we did. I mean, I love the sports, I love the classes, I love the people, I love Cherry Hill. So not one moment, but just a great feeling about the whole experience.
Well, that's great. Um, Anything you wish classmates knew about you back then? Our shyest student, apparently,
That's
the
exactly what I
moniker.
wanted to talk about. I mean, I was looking through the yearbook and I had forgotten that. And that's, I guess I was really shy back then, and I probably still am, but I guess I don't feel like I'm as shy, and I think I've made progress. So that's the main reason I wanted to do this podcast. So people heard me talk. I don't think people knew I could talk back in high school, but that's, I guess, the biggest thing I would love to change if I had to go backwards, and try not to be as shy as I was back then.
Hmm. Have you been back in the building? Your kids went to Eastern, so they didn't go to East, but
They
you've been back
did,
in the
but
building?
yeah, they were there for sporting events.
Okay.
And I've heard this from other people before on the podcast that it looks exactly the same. It's incredible because, the hallways haven't changed, the lockers haven't changed, the fields haven't changed. Um,
They did get tennis courts, I heard.
yeah, they do have tennis courts. I forgot that is new.
We used to have to go over to Beck, so
Right, I didn't even remember that.
yeah.
So there are tennis courts. They put turf recently on the football field, but it's otherwise it looks exactly the same. It's amazing that they haven't upgraded anything, and I think they pay a lot of taxes in Cherry Hill. So I'm lucky my kids didn't go there. I think I would have said like, when are you going to make some changes? But it looks the same. But I guess that's not bad. It was a nice school.
So we're back in 1980, and you're looking out 40 years and down the road. Is this where you saw yourself?
I mean, my family always joked and said when I said I wanted to become a doctor, they were like, "Well, you really couldn't do anything else." And they don't mean that as a compliment because I guess I wasn't very talkative back then, and I wasn't good with my hands. I wasn't good with business. So it was basically being a doctor and nothing else. So I guess I always knew I would be a doctor. My dad was a pediatrician, and I always loved how happy he was with his career. So I guess being a pediatrician isn't a surprise. I love being a father and being a husband, and I might have had 5 kids. Like I grew up one of 5, and I wish we could have had more, but different times it's hard to do that. So I guess there were a lot of periods along the way, like the story I told with getting into college, where things didn't always go as planned, and there were moments where I thought something was going to happen and it didn't. It was like this expression that men plan and God laughs. So I did all along plan things, but they didn't always turn out perfectly. But I think most of the things wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything about the way everything's gone.
Well, that's great. So, what's the best piece of advice you would give your 18-year-old self, or maybe you gave your 18-year-old kids?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's in a similar vein. I would tell them that,
Apply to more than 5 colleges.
buy them 5 colleges, definitely. I would just say that, have your dreams. There are going to be times where you're going to have things turn out differently than you planned, but you still have to enjoy and cherish every moment. You have to realize that, we kind of sweat little things, and life is too short, and you have to believe in yourself and believe that things will work out. I guess I would tell them to be kind. I learned from my parents. My parents were very kind to everyone. And I just think now, especially I see it as a pediatrician, there's people need kindness. They need to be accepted and loved. There's just so many things that are going on that, especially for children these days, have been difficult. So I would just, I guess, kindness is important, dreaming, working hard, and just trying to be resilient and sweat the big things and enjoy every day, I guess would be the messages.
That's good advice for all of us.
Mhm.
All right, so we've reached our fast and furious finish.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite TV show or a favorite movie or a favorite book from back during our high school days?
Yeah, I was trying to think about 1980. I mean, I know I loved Cheers, but I can't remember if that was 80s or early or late. I love MASH. I love St. Elsewhere. I was going to be a doctor, so I had to like that. But I don't remember any books or movies, and I don't even know if those shows were all the years have blended together, high school, college, when I watched those. But
Yeah. No, MASH was definitely on. I think Cheers might have been a little later. Not
okay.
sure about St. Elsewhere. So, do you have a favorite musical group or genre or an artist that you
Yeah.
enjoyed?
Yeah, that's an easy one. I guess when we were growing up in probably like the early 70s, my brother Mark loved music, and he came home one day, probably in like 1975, and he had heard Bruce Springsteen for the first time, and he started playing him nonstop around our house. And so from that time, I think our whole family, it's been like the soundtrack of our lives. We've seen Bruce Springsteen probably over 100 times, and a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
concerts we've gone to have been together, all my brothers and sisters and myself. And then finally in Philadelphia in March, I went with all my kids. So that was
Oh,
the
wow.
best show that I had seen out of all the hundreds, because he was great, but it was so great to watch my kids dancing and having fun and to be together with them and seeing that they've enjoyed something that I've loved for years. I mean, they would call me after high school, I'm sorry, after college fraternity parties and say, hey, they played a Bruce Springsteen song at the fraternity party last night. So they started to catch on, but he's just taught me, he provides so much meaning in his songs and his messages. And even now, he's a little bit older than us, but he just
Yeah.
talks now about how, a lot of his friends are passing away. And he talks about how he has more yesterdays and more goodbyes than he has hellos and tomorrows. So it's just a message that, we're all getting older, and, like we've said, time is precious, and we
Make the
have to
most of it.
take care of ourselves and make the most of it and enjoy our families and our lives. And I know you're retired, you told me, so you're already doing that. I think I have to, I think all of us have to start thinking more about what's the next step beyond just our professions. And, I think the messages he taught me and the fun I had with my family makes him easily that choice for my culture icon.
That's great. Did you have a favorite place that you hung out or would eat?
Yeah, I mean, I love Kaminsky's. We used to go there even in high school and after high school. I mean, I remember Big John's, which was always a
Mm.
favorite spot.
Not
Yeah,
there anymore, but
uh,
Kaminsky's is, right?
yeah, and I remember when we were in high school, we were legally allowed to leave and go out for lunch. So it's so much different now than when it's kind of like a lockdown. But I remember we would pick up at lunch, and you could drive to the McDonald's or drive to Big John's when you were seniors. So we would skip the cafeteria and go to Big John's. I remember that's a big change. And the other thing I remember about East is when we first got there, I remember in the courtyards, they had those courtyards right outside the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I remember you were, I think it was our freshman year when you were allowed to go out there and smoke.
Yeah.
And I just, it was so different. I mean, you were like, I know later on everyone would go out to the different wings and smoke there as well, but they were smoking right in the out
Courtyard.
area of the cafeteria. So, my kids now are like, you were allowed to smoke in high school. And I guess a lot has changed. We could drive for lunch. We could drink at a younger age,
Yeah.
but, it was a different time. But yeah, I think that the McDonald's and the Big John's and Kaminsky's were my favorites.
Yeah. Um, so I'll pull this here. Remember this guy?
No, too much hair. I Now I have too little, and back then I had too much. So yes, I do remember that, Kara. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, You do you know why we have I've said this is my quest, figure out why we have a Western theme? A Western
No,
theme to our
no
yearbook?
idea. I've heard you ask that, and I didn't even remember it. And then as
Yeah.
dug out my yearbook and I saw it and the guns and all the stuff you've talked about, and no, I hope you figure that out, because
Well, I
it
actually have
deserves an
somebody
answer.
coming up. Jane Baumgartner has messaged me and said she may have a little insight. So I'm
Oh,
excited
wow. That's a
to
good teaser.
connect with her.
We're all
Yeah,
gonna be listening for that one.
yeah, yeah.
And I know my
Uh,
quote, I would definitely change. I don't even know what it's something about weekends with the gang or something.
yeah, yeah. That's what it
Shows how
was.
shallow I was in high school after saying all these things about living each day to its fullest. And, that I wrote that. So I would definitely change that. But, what can you do? Can't go back.
We were 18.
Yeah, we're 18.
Hadn't
Well,
lived a lot of life at that point.
right.
So is there anything, this last point here, anything you want to say to anyone from school might be listening?
No, I mean, I've said it too many times during this. I mean, first of all, I love listening to the people you've interviewed because it's brought back so many great memories. And it was a great time. I mean, we had a great area to grow up in. It was safe. I mean, I tell the kids I see in my practice all the time, yeah, we would just get home from school and we would go out and play, and our parents would call us for dinner and then we'd go back out and play, and no screen time, nothing organized. It wasn't like we had to go from one activity to the other. We would just do what we did in the neighborhood, and it was a great time to grow up. I was lucky enough, my parents were fantastic and they taught me so much, and I was privileged to just have them in my lives and still have my dad in my life. So I mean, no, I just feel blessed. My mom was sick with multiple sclerosis, and she was asked one time if she would change anything about her life, and she said, she wouldn't change a thing, even though she was sick and lost a lot of valuable years with her grandkids and with us. And that was a big impact on me. I don't think I would change a thing. I think that I'm very lucky, and we had a great way to start at Cherry Hill, and it's been, to me, every day since has been better than the last day. So I'm very lucky.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure, and thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Well, I
Even
hope
though
it's
you're a North Carolina fan, I will, we'll still talk.
okay. Sounds good. Well, I hope this isn't the last time we get a chance to talk. And best of luck as you wind down your career and hit retirement at some point.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope to follow you soon and be baking like you told me you were before we got on the line. I
That's
like
right.
to bake too. Probably not as good as you, but I will definitely look forward to those days of baking and hanging on the beach.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, you take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast, and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband, Randy Coughdale, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.